Have you ever finished a cup of tea, but couldn't remember how it tasted? A lot of us live like that, rushing from one task to the next, from one place to another, barely aware of the moment we're in. Life moves like a fast-forwarded movie, and somehow we're just playing a supporting role in our own story. But the question is, how do we return to being the main character? You might think peace is something you have to find out there, maybe in a quiet monastery or on top of some remote mountain. But the truth is, peace isn't somewhere else. It's right here, in your breath, in your steps, in the simple things we tend to overlook. You don't need to change your life circumstances. You just need to change how you show up in them. And that is mindfulness. Maybe you've heard people say, to be mindful, you have to sit still and empty your mind. That's probably one of the biggest misconceptions. Mindfulness doesn't mean wiping your mind clean of thoughts. It means learning how to see them like watching leaves float down a river. You don't have to chase them. You don't have to push them away. You just notice them and gently let them pass. In today's fast-paced world, mindfulness isn't some luxury reserved for people with lots of free time. It's a practice of waking up to life. Anyone can do it while washing dishes, walking the dog, or drinking a cup of tea. And the beautiful thing is, when you return to the present moment, something inside you begins to shift. So, what is mindfulness, really? And how can we begin simply, gently, even in the middle of our busy lives? Let's start with one important truth. 1. Mindfulness doesn't ask you to be perfect. There's a common misunderstanding, especially for those new to mindfulness. People think, I need to clear my mind completely. I must be perfectly still, perfectly focused. No wandering thoughts allowed. And then they try really hard to reach this ideal Zen state where nothing moves. But here's the thing. Mindfulness doesn't ask for perfection. It doesn't want you to become some ideal version of yourself. It simply invites you to return to this breath, this moment, this very heartbeat. A wise old monk once said to a young student, "You don't need to climb a mountain to find peace. Just sit down where you already are and listen to your heart." That's where mindfulness lives. So many people reach the end of a long, stressful day, try to meditate for 5 minutes, and then get frustrated because the mind won't settle. The thoughts keep coming, the restlessness doesn't go away, and they sigh, "I'm not good at this. Maybe I can't do it." But in that very moment when you realize your mind has drifted, and you gently guide your attention back to the breath that is mindfulness, it's not about staying perfectly still. It's about returning over, and over with compassion and patience. Practicing mindfulness is not like climbing a sacred mountain only a few can reach. It's more like coming home to an old quiet house in your heart, a place you forgot, but that's always been waiting for you. Even if you only become aware of one single breath in your whole day, that still matters. Because that breath means you're waking up. You're no longer sleepwalking through life. I once met a retired elementary school teacher from New Jersey. She said, "My mind was constantly racing and it exhausted me. But then I started practicing mindfulness in a very simple way. No apps, no long meditation. Each morning, as she poured her tea, she stood still in her kitchen. She took one deep breath. She felt the warmth of the cup in her hands. She noticed the morning light coming through the window. She listened to her own heartbeat. She told me, just that made the whole day feel different. Softer, lighter. Sometimes, that's all we really need." In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha taught, the practitioner dwells observing the body in the body with mindfulness and clear knowing to remove craving and sorrow from the world. Mindfulness 80 is about remembering, waking up, not to erase your thoughts, but to see them without being swept away. The Buddha never asked us to become superhuman. He simply taught us how to come back and live deeply in what's already here. Some days, mindfulness comes easily. Other days, the mind is a storm of birds flying in every direction. But both are part of the path. The point isn't whether the mind is quiet. The point is whether we can see what's happening with kindness and patience. So if you're just beginning, be gentle with yourself. Mindfulness isn't a destination. It's a way of being, a relationship. And, like all relationships, it grows little by little, not through force, but through love and steady care. And if there's only one thing you remember today, let it be this. Even one fully present breath is enough to soften an entire day. 2. Mindfulness, a gift from Buddhism, meant for everyone. Some things in life may come from ancient traditions, but their beauty is too vast to belong to just one group of people. Mindfulness is one of those things. It's a gift that grew out of the Buddha's teachings, born in forest gatherings, in silent footsteps across the dusty paths of India over 2,600 years ago. But mindfulness is not the private property of Buddhism. It doesn't require a religion. It doesn't ask you to believe in any higher power. It only asks one thing: to be fully present with yourself right here, right now. And the beautiful thing is, anyone can practice it. A person seeking peace after a painful divorce. Someone adjusting to retirement, learning how to slow down after a lifetime of rushing. A young adult feeling lost between career pressure and quiet emptiness. All of them can step into the space of mindfulness, like entering a garden with no gates, where everyone is welcome. There was a man in his 50s who joined a weekend retreat at a monastery in California. He wasn't a Buddhist. In fact, he had never read a single sutra. But after 2 days of quietly sitting, breathing, walking slowly through the pine trees, and eating in silence, he broke down in tears. And he said, "This is the first time in 10 years I've actually felt alive." That wasn't a religious experience. That was the power of returning to the present moment, something anyone, from anywhere, with any background, can touch. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha said clearly, the practitioner dwells in the body with mindfulness and clear knowing. There were no conditions, no titles, no boundaries between monks and lay people, young or old, believer or non-believer. Today, modern science confirms what the Buddha saw centuries ago. Mindfulness reduces stress, improves focus, lowers anxiety, and increases a sense of well-being. Psychiatrists, wellness coach 7 CEOs of major companies are incorporating mindfulness into their daily lives. Not because they follow Buddhism, but because it works, because it's simple, and because it speaks to something deep within us. You'll now find mindfulness courses held in hospitals, schools, and offices. No statues of the Buddha, no chanting. But still, the essence of mindfulness is very much alive, because mindfulness doesn't require rituals. It just requires honesty with yourself. You can practice mindfulness while washing dishes, walking your dog, or tending to your garden. You don't have to go to a monastery. You don't have to change your lifestyle. You just need a little stillness, a little awareness. That's enough to create a moment of peace in the middle of chaos. A single mother in Boston once wrote something simple in her meditation journal. Mindfulness doesn't make my worries disappear, but it helps me not drown in them. And really, that's all mindfulness needs to do. It doesn't erase pain. It simply helps us not get swept away by the pain. It doesn't demand we stop thinking. It teaches us how to stand steady in the middle of our thoughts like someone who knows they're drifting and gently paddles back to shore. Mindfulness, then, is like a small lamp. It doesn't need someone else to light it for you. You only need to recognize that You can live differently. You can live awake, even if it's just for one breath. 3. Overcoming the challenges of mindfulness. Starting a mindfulness practice, that part is easy. Staying with it, that's where the real challenge begins. On the journey back to the present moment, there are days when everything flows. A deep breath, morning light streaming through the window, a moment of stillness between tasks. It feels natural, even effortless. But then, there are days when the mind acts like a restless child, running around, jumping from one thing to the next, refusing to sit still. And in those moments, it's easy to feel discouraged. A man in his 40s once shared during a meditation retreat, "I tried meditating, but after 3 minutes, my mind was already spinning. Thinking about work, unpaid bills, a conversation from yesterday, and I felt like I was doing it all wrong." And honestly, that's how so many people feel. Because anyone who practices mindfulness, whether for 3 days or 30 years, will eventually meet the same challenges. A wandering mind, impatience, that nagging voice saying, "Maybe I'm just not good at this." And sometimes, the doubt that whispers, "Am I just pretending to be mindful, or am I faking stillness?" But here's the truth. It doesn't matter how far you've wandered. What matters is whether you come back. Mindfulness doesn't require your mind to be calm for 20 uninterrupted minutes. It just gently says, "Oh, the mind has wandered again." And the moment you notice that, it means you're already back. The Buddha once gave a beautiful image. Our mind is like the sky, vast and open. Thoughts, emotions, worries, they're just clouds passing through. Some days are clear, some days are stormy, but the sky is always there, and it is never stained by the passing clouds. So when you find yourself feeling like you're not mindful enough, the practice isn't to scold yourself or force your thoughts into submission. It's simply to notice and return. With one breath, with one gentle moment of awareness, no matter how small. A young woman in a meditation group in Oregon once shared, "There was a time I was incredibly anxious. I tried to meditate, but my mind was all over the place. I wanted to quit. Then I remembered what a nun once said. Even if you notice just one breath among 1,000 thoughts, you've already planted a seed. So I took one long exhale, and I cried." A lot of people expect mindfulness to bring instant peace, but it's not a quick fix. It's a way of living. And on this path, every small return matters. Patience becomes your companion. Our impatience often comes from a very human place, the part of us that wants control, fast results, clear success. But the Dharma doesn't teach us to conquer ourselves through pressure. It teaches us to hold ourselves with understanding and compassion. And don't let the excuse of not enough time stop you from practicing. A mother of 3 can be mindful while washing vegetables. A truck driver can take one deep breath before leaving the parking lot. A doctor working 12-hour shifts can pause and feel the cold metal of the stethoscope in her hand. Mindfulness doesn't require ceremony. It only asks for your return. And sometimes, it's not the wandering mind or the busy schedule that pulls us away. It's our own harsh self-judgment. Questions like, "Am I doing this right? Is this really mindfulness?" Or worse, "Maybe I'm just not cut out for meditation." These are just more clouds. Recognize them. And remember, no one practices mindfulness perfectly. Even seasoned monks have days when their minds wander. But it's in those quiet, gentle returns again and again that wisdom begins to grow. So if today your mind feels scattered, if you can't sit still for 5 minutes, if you feel like mindfulness just isn't working for you, please know you are not alone. And please also know that the very moment you notice that, you've already begun to come back. Mindfulness is coming home, even if you've been gone a long, long time. 4. Starting with the small things in daily life. One common misunderstanding about mindfulness is this. People think they need lots of free time, a quiet room, a meditation cushion, and maybe a guided practice from a fancy app. And so, because life feels too busy, too full of responsibilities, they put it off telling themselves, "I'll start when I have more time." But here's the truth. Mindfulness doesn't require more time. It just requires more presence. And you can start right now, in the middle of your life, with the smallest things. There was an older woman who shared after a practice session at a meditation center. "I can't sit for long because of my knees, but now every morning I slow down with my tea. I feel the warmth of the cup in my hands, the breath moving in, and the scent of the tea leaves. And just like that, I feel alive." Mindfulness isn't about how long you sit. It's about whether you're truly present in that moment. Imagine starting your day like this. Instead of brushing your teeth while checking your phone, you just brush your teeth. You feel the water, the minty scent, the motion of your hand. Just a few minutes like that, and your mind already feels a little more calm before the day rushes in. Or when washing dishes, rather than treating it as a choretry, letting it become a standing meditation. Feel the warm water on your skin, the texture of the plate, the sound of the water. No need to try to meditate. Just be there. In Buddhism, there's a deep teaching. Every moment can be a place of practice. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing it, can be a doorway into mindfulness. You don't need to wait for the weekend. You don't need to escape to the mountains. You don't need life to be different. You just need to choose, in this moment, to return. Practicing mindfulness is like planting seeds in the soil of now. Every time you take a mindful sip of water, a seed is planted. Every step you take with awareness, a seed is watered. The tree might not grow overnight, but over time, you'll notice something inside you is shifting. You start living differently. A Japanese Zen master once told his students, "When you eat, just eat. When you walk, just walk. When you breathe, just breathe." It sounds simple, but in a multitasking world where we eat while working, walk while texting, doing one thing with full presence becomes an act of courage and of healing. A man in his 50s who had been living with chronic anxiety was referred to a meditation program by his doctor, but he couldn't sit still for even 3 minutes. So instead of forcing himself to sit, he started practicing mindfulness while walking his dog. Just walking, looking at the trees, listening to the rustling leaves, feeling his feet hit the ground. He later shared, "The dog was still the same, the path was still the same, but I felt different." Mindfulness doesn't change the world. It changes how we show up in the world. And the best part is, you don't have to wait until you have more time, more experience, or more peace and quiet. You just need to begin right in the middle of your ordinary life. Drinking tea, walking, brushing your teeth, eating dinner, sitting on the bus. No moment is too small if you are fully present in it. So don't worry if you haven't built a daily meditation habit yet. Just today, try slowing down for one thing. Be fully there. And that alone means you've already started walking the path of mindfulness. 5. Mindfulness, the art of watching without judgment. One of the most common misunderstandings about mindfulness is this. People think they're supposed to stop thinking, to empty their mind, to silence every worry, plan, memory, emotion, and only then it counts as mindfulness or meditation. And because of that myth, so many people feel like they've already failed before they even begin. Because the mind keeps thinking. Because the past keeps creeping in. Because the future keeps knocking, even in the quietest moment. But here's the truth. Mindfulness isn't about getting rid of thoughts. It's about learning to observe them without getting pulled in. It's like sitting by a river. Thoughts, whether beautiful or messy, are like leaves floating on the surface. They come, they go. Your only job is to watch. Don't jump in and grab every leaf. Don't try to push them away. Don't blame yourself because the water's not calm. Just sit and gently say, "Oh, there goes another leaf." In one Buddhist scripture, the Buddha compared the mind to water. If left alone, it clears on its own. But if we keep stirring it with judgment, resistance, and expectation, still water becomes muddy. I remember a middle-aged man sharing his story during a meditation retreat. He said, "I was meditating and suddenly remembered a fight I had with my wife from 2 years ago. I got angry all over again. Instead of breathing, I started arguing with her in my head. Eventually, I opened my eyes, sighed, and thought, I'm just not cut out for this mindfulness stuff." But what he didn't realize, what many people miss, is this. The very moment he noticed, he was lost in thought. That was mindfulness. Mindfulness doesn't demand perfect stillness. It simply invites awareness of it in the noise. Your mind isn't the enemy. It's part of being human. The mind thinks. That's its job. But what we can learn is this. We don't have to let it run the show. We can choose not to let every thought lead us, stir us, speak for us. There's a story about a young student who asked his Zen teacher, "Master, whenever I sit down, my mind starts thinking about the past and the future. How do I make it stop?" The teacher smiled and said, "You don't have to stop it. Just recognize it. Like hearing a bell, simply say, 'Ah, there's a bell.' Then return to your breath. That's enough. And that's the beauty of mindfulness. There's no pressure, no striving, no need to reach some perfect, still state. Just accept what's here and breathe with it." A woman in her 60s once said at a group session in Seattle, "I used to get so mad at myself when my mind wandered during meditation. But now, I try to sit with my mind the way I'd sit with a crying child, not scolding, just gently holding." And that is also mindfulness. Sitting with your own mind, not demanding it to be quiet, but softly whispering, "Oh, you're thinking again? That's okay. Let's breathe." In a world full of noise, full of pressure to be good, be calm, do it right, mindfulness is a gentle reminder. You don't need to be perfect. You just need to be real. Real with what's inside you. Real with this breath. Real with your emotions, whether they're peaceful or chaotic. And when we learn to observe without judgment, to see without clinging, even the heaviest thoughts begin to soften, like morning mist on a leaf. So if you're sitting in meditation and find yourself thinking about work, the past, or what to cook for dinner, please don't think you've failed. Just gently say, "Ah, the mind is thinking," and return with a deep breath, a small smile, and a kind moment of forgiveness toward yourself. That is mindfulness, not dramatic, not fancy, but awake, tender, and profoundly human. 6. Be patient, like planting a seed. There's one question I hear a lot during mindfulness sessions. How do I know if mindfulness is actually working? And the way it's asked often comes with a worried look, like meditation is some kind of exam. And if you don't feel peaceful after a few days, you must be doing something wrong. But let me ask you this. Has anyone ever planted a seed and then stood over it saying, "Why haven't you bloomed yet?" We don't plant seeds to see flowers right away. We plant them to begin a journey quiet, patient, and full of trust. Mindfulness practice is the same. In the Buddhist view, there's a beautiful image. A practitioner is like a farmer not on fields of soil, but on the inner field of the heart. Every time you sit still, every time you come back to your breath, every time you drop a judgment or soften a reaction, that's another seed, planted deep within. And slowly, the inner landscape begins to change, not loudly, not suddenly, but truly. I remember an older meditator once shared something deeply touching. I had been meditating every morning for 6 months. Nothing seemed different. The same worries, the same racing thoughts, the same sense of feeling lost. But then one day, while waiting at a red light in the middle of traffic, I felt this strange calm. Not because there was no noise, but because, for the first time, I wasn't swept away by it. That moment, that quiet peace in the middle of chaos was the sprouting of a seed. Not all growth comes from effort. Some growth happens simply when we're patient enough not to force it. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha teaches, you cannot make a flower bloom before its season. But if you care for it daily, it will bloom on the gentlest morning. But today's world, with its speed and pressure, has trained us to believe everything needs results now. We study for grades. We work for outcomes. We train for praise. But in the world of mindfulness, there are no trophies. There is only nurturing. Each day you sit not to be better than anyone else, but simply to come closer to yourself. And that takes time. A woman from Colorado once said during a group session, "At first I treated meditation like a task-like exercise. Is it working yet? But now I see it like watering a plant. Some days it's sunny. Some days it rains. But I still water because I love the plant, not just the flowers." And when mindfulness is practiced from a place of non-expectation, that's when results show up quietly, gently. It might be one breath that keeps you from reacting. A moment where you notice your anxiety and simply come back to the now. A morning where the sunlight hits your coffee, and for no big reason at all, you feel grateful. Not because something huge happened, just because you're alive. That's mindfulness. It's not a goal. It's a way of growing like a tree in a garden. Watered daily. Not rushed. Not forced. Just trusted. And present long enough to see the season change. So if these days you've been practicing and feel like nothing's changing, please don't give up. Just sit. Just breathe. Just quietly plant the seed. Because every mindful action you take is doing something. Something you may not see today. But one morning, when you're not even looking for it, it will find you. 7. Body and mind are one, and the breath is the bridge. Here's something interesting that many people don't really notice. We live our entire lives in this body, but rarely do we truly listen to it. The body is like a quiet companion. It carries us through every season, every up and down. But it's only when it starts to hurt, to ache, or fall ill that we suddenly pay attention. And we call that a warning. But maybe, if we had listened sooner, some of that pain might not have needed to happen. In Buddhist teachings, the body and the mind are not two separate things. A tense body often reflects an anxious mind. A heavy heart can show up as stiff shoulders, neck pain, or short, shallow breaths. Mindfulness helps us recognize this connection not as a theory, but through direct experience. And it begins simply with the breath. The breath, something that's been with us every single day of our lives, usually goes unnoticed. It feels too basic, too automatic. But that very breath is the closest door we have to come back home. A middle-aged woman in our mindfulness group in San Diego once shared, Whenever I feel anxious, I don't even realize I'm holding my breath. It wasn't until I was guided back to breathing that I saw how I was living like I was running even when I was sitting still. And once she began focusing on her breath, the anxiety didn't disappear overnight, but it stopped drowning her because she found an anchor, a place to return to amid the swirling thoughts and emotions. The breath doesn't belong to the past. It doesn't rush ahead into the future. It only lives here in the now. And that's why, each time we return to the breath, we return to ourselves. In the Anapanasati Sutta, the discourse on mindful breathing, the Buddha teaches, when breathing in long, one knows, I am breathing in long. When breathing out short, one knows, I am breathing out short. No extra effort, no analysis, just knowing what is, as it is. And that alone is enough to plant a seed of awakening. There was once an older man who practiced breath meditation in a rehab center in Oregon. He said, I spent 30 years fighting myself. But when I finally learned to just sit and breathe without fixing anything, it was the first time in my life I didn't feel like I was a problem to be solved. That's the power of coming back to the body through the bridge of the breath. The body is not just where we live. It's also where the mind reveals itself. Every feeling, anger, fear, joy, sorrow, shows up somewhere in the body. If we learn to listen to the body, we begin to see the mind. If we care for the body, we're also tending to the heart. And the breath is the thread that connects both, not with force, not with control, but with a gentle invitation. Come home, notice, soften. Think about a day when you feel tired, overwhelmed, like everything is just too much. In that moment, what if you paused, placed a hand on your belly, took a slow, steady breath in, and a soft, gentle breath out? Nothing more. Just listen to one breath, and you'll realize the waves are still there, but now you're standing on the shore. Mindfulness doesn't ask us to understand everything. It just asks us to come closer. And the closest thing is the breath, because it's always there, always waiting, never judging, never rushing, just patient like an old, kind friend. 8. Mindfulness, the foundation of wisdom and compassion. Have you ever wondered why some people feel things so deeply, yet seem to get hurt so easily? Why some forms of love feel so intense, but eventually that same love turns into the deepest suffering in someone's life? It's because emotion alone isn't a strong enough foundation for lasting compassion. In Buddhist teachings, compassion isn't just a warm, fuzzy feeling. It's not just sympathy. True compassion, when rooted in wisdom, becomes a force of real liberation. And that wisdom can't arise without mindfulness. Mindfulness is where all deep understanding begins. Because only when we're truly present in this moment can we begin to see things as they really are, not through the lens of our old habits, not through the filter of memories or desires, but through clear, unconditioned awareness. And when we start to see clearly like that, insight begins to bloom. Insight isn't just something we memorize from books or recite from scriptures. It's not fancy words or clever ideas. It's something we feel deeply through lived experience. That everything changes, that every emotion will eventually pass, that everything we cling to, whether it's a person, a success, or a dream, is impermanent. This isn't just a poetic truth. It's not pessimism. It's the profound reality the Buddha saw over 2,600 years ago. In the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha said, there is suffering, there is a cause of suffering, there is an end to suffering, and there is a path that leads to that end. But to see suffering clearly, We need mindfulness. To see the root of suffering, we must be willing to turn inward, not run away, not cover it up with fake positivity. I once met a man who came to the monastery with a broken heart. He had lost his wife in an accident. For years, he tried to be strong. He buried his pain under work, alcohol, and silence. But one day, he sat down, just to breathe, just to look within. And when there was no more reason to resist, he told us, "For the first time, I looked straight at the pain without running from it, and I cried. But this time, I didn't feel weak. I felt like I was beginning to heal." That's what mindfulness does. It opens the door to understanding. And with understanding, love can grow from the roots, not just from emotional reaction or temporary empathy. That kind of love doesn't cling. It doesn't expect. It doesn't say, "I love you because you make me happy." It simply says, "I love you because I understand." Understand how fragile life is. Understand the fear that person carries. And also understand that I don't need to control or hold on in order to love. Mindfulness helps us see things as they are, no more, no less. And from that seeing, wisdom arises. And from that wisdom, love becomes steady and resilient. A great Tibetan teacher once said, "Compassion is not a soft emotion. It is inner strength born from clear seeing and fearlessness." In today's world, where everyone is shouting on social media, in the news, even in self-help spaces, telling us to be happy, be positive, love more, maybe what we need most isn't another piece of advice. Maybe what we need is to simply be here, to see clearly and gently what's going on inside us. Because that's where wisdom and compassion meet. And maybe, after everything we've explored together, from our first conscious breath, to mindful steps, to patiently planting inner seeds, one truth becomes clear. Mindfulness isn't a technique. It's a way of living, a quiet return, a state of mind that is still and awake, from which wisdom can grow and love can endure. Mindfulness doesn't ask you to leave the world behind. It invites you to show up more fully to the world, right in the middle of daily life. A meal, a look, a moment of stillness between two tasks. And when you begin to live like that, you start to notice things you used to rush past. You see impermanence, you see suffering, but you also see, right there within the suffering, a path to freedom. And perhaps, when the outer noise fades just enough, you can finally hear the truest voice, the one that's always been inside you. Just one mindful breath, just one steady step, just one gentle smile to yourself. That's all it takes to begin again. If this message touched something in your heart, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing to Buddhism Seed Stow. Help spread these seeds of mindfulness to others. And feel free to leave a comment below. Share your practice, your insight, or even just a breath you noticed today. Wishing you deep presence in the now and a life lived with clarity and compassion.